A Love Rekindled Too Late. Brian's final chapter. I am a believer that everything happens for a reason. There is a reason that I decided I was done when I did. There is a reason I found this apartment so quickly. There is a reason that awesome new guy came into my life when he did. I wasn't meant to come home and find Brian like that. I wasn't meant to grieve his loss as his girlfriend. I wasn't meant to be alone during all of this. I am not necessarily religious, but I am grateful to whatever higher power has been looking out for me. I'll continue to go chronologically, because that is kinda what helps me process all this. The last week has been a complete blur, to say the least. Thursday, I went to work. That was a huge fucking mistake. I ended up taking this entire week off to grieve and take care of final arrangements. I texted back and forth with oldest younger sister and younger brother regarding things from Brian's life they didn't know about on Thursday and Friday. OAS asked me to make a Spotify playlist with all of his favorite music. So I did. When I was finished, there were 69 songs, which I think was Brian laughing at me from the afterlife. YB asked me to share the playlist with him as well, and to make it collaborative so that they could all add songs to it. Any guesses as to how many songs they ended up adding? 3. They only added 3 songs. I can't stop thinking of songs to add to it, and they only could think of 3. One of them was a song that he hadn't liked since high school. He had mentioned it being a football locker room jam, but we had only jammed to it together once, in my car, the one time he let me control my own damn radio. Anyway, OAS also asked for any pictures of him. He hated taking pictures, so I only found like 6. She also asked how long he worked at the sports talk radio station before he was fired. YB asked me for a list of the friends he was closest to before he passed, so that they could figure out pallbearers. And then I stopped hearing from them. Complete radio silence. They didn't even tell me when and where the funeral was. I had to find out from one of his friends. I am a little angry about that, especially considering how they acted at the funeral itself, but I will get to that. The weekend was pretty good. High school best friend and I went out and got drunk on Saturday, and I met awesome new guy's parents and sister on Sunday. Monday was the funeral. My dad went with me because he knew and worked with Brian and didn't want me to have to go alone. I was very, very nervous about how I would be received. The first people I encountered were 2 of Brian's former co-workers from the sports talk station. They both hugged me for an extremely long time and told me that they had been thinking of me often. That was how everyone interacted with me. It just so happened that all of his closest friends had, luckily, gotten there at about the same time and had managed to sit in the same section at the church. Dad and I sat next to the folks he shared a show with on the radio and behind George and crew. The picture on the obituary was one of the 2 of us and another couple that I had sent them, cropped to where all you could see was his face, of course. And the music playing in the church before and after the service was the playlist I had sent them. It was weird. Even after breaking up, even after death, I still was the one he could count on to get shit done. There came a point during the service where they had family and friends get up and say some words about Brian if they so chose. I got to hear a few stories I hadn't before, most of which were from people he had known in high school. A guy from the baseball fan group he hung with spoke. The leader of the radio show he was on spoke. They all said extremely pretty words about him. Everything was so positive. It was strange, honestly, to hear about him in such a positive light. None of them knew him like me, and his intimate circle did. Which is why none of us spoke. Not one person who he considered a best friend the day he died spoke a single word at the funeral itself. I paid my respects to his family before heading out to talk to our friends. His dad hugged me, told me he was so glad I could be there, and said, "Thank you for putting up with him." Which is what he said to me every time I saw his family. His mom hugged me but didn't say a word. His sisters and brother hugged me and told me how much they loved me. As badly as things ended, I am forever grateful that he had such an amazing, caring family, even if he didn't always appreciate them. As I said, none of his very close friends spoke at the actual funeral. But we sure did talk about it in the parking lot afterwards, though. I snuck in a half pint of Evan Williams, Brian's whiskey of choice, and one of his friends from the next state over brought a 12-pack of Budweiser. We all agreed that it would have felt wrong if we didn't have a drink to honor him. So we stood in a circle in the parking lot of the church and drank and spoke the true words about Brian. We shared stories until the beer and whiskey was gone, and decided to meet up at a restaurant here in the town and most of his friends live in. I was very touched that they included me. We get to the restaurant and start telling stories. His best friend, just out of nowhere, says, "Raise your hand if you ever saw Brian get into a physical altercation." Most of us raised our hands. Best friend, best friend's wife, and I recalled the time we went to a soccer match and Brian got into a fight with a guy that kept throwing full cans of beer out onto the pitch. One of Brian's former roommates showed us his false bottom teeth that he only had because Brian punched out his real ones in an altercation regarding former roommates' druggy friends stealing Brian's shit. Brian's friends from the next stayed over, and I talked about the time we went to a pub in their city for St. Patrick's Day, and he almost got in a fight with the extremely loud, extremely drunk people next to us because one of them fell onto our table and almost knocked over our beers. George then says, "I never saw him fight anyone, but who all saw Brian yell at strangers?" Again, most of us raised our hands. They all looked at me and said, "Yeah, you've pretty much seen it all, huh?" Yep, I have. I told them about Brian's road rage and about the time it was icy and some guy in the Walmart parking lot almost skidded into us because he was driving too fast. So Brian followed him into the store to yell at him for almost hitting us. Brian was never afraid to be confrontational, whether he was in the right or not. After dinner and one more beer, we parted ways. They all hugged me and made me promise to not be a stranger. For better or worse, I am glad that Brian had such a good group of friends. They knew who he was and loved him anyway, through thick and thin and all the bullshit. I'm also thankful for the fact that I got along with them all so well, and that they valued me enough to include me in their dinner. Brian always said that he loved that I was so great with his friends, and that I could hold my own with them without him there. It's a little sad and a little funny, but not in a haha way, that we ended up all getting together without him this way. Tuesday, Wednesday, and yesterday, I set my sights on the house. When I got there on Tuesday, the power was out. I assume that was because Brian didn't pay his deposit before he passed. So I got to call electric company customer service and explain to them what was going on. I luckily had a tax document with the last 4 of his social security number, so they let me access his account and pay the deposit so the power could be turned back on. Then, for 4 or 5 hours a day, I organized, packed, and scrubbed the entire house. I moved everything but the furniture, too heavy, and Brian's clothes. I figured his family would want to take care of that, into the garage so the house would be ready to show. I also packed up and took some things I needed. Towels, dishes, silverware, the coffee table. I full-on sobbed when it was time to leave. When we moved into that house, I never in a billion years would have guessed that that would be how we moved out. When things were good, we even talked about trying to rent to own the home from the owner. And then, over the past month, I packed up, cleaned up, and moved our entire lives. I first moved mine into my apartment. Then, I moved his into the garage until his family can come collect it. It has been absolutely surreal. When I got finished yesterday, I went to dinner alone. I had a steak and a couple of drinks. I remembered all the times I went to the same restaurant for a steak and a couple of drinks to escape Brian's insanity for just a moment before I had to return to reality. I stared off into space for so long that the waitress asked if I was okay. I just told her I'd had a long week. Before I left the restaurant, I got a text from Brian's mom that read as follows: "Hope you are well. Don't care about what happened between you and Brian. That's your business, not ours. I do know that I saw a lot of love between you two. We will be coming to our town Saturday to get his things at around 10-ish. You are welcome to be there if you want to be. We are bringing his dog with us. I am going to need some info concerning utilities, etc. that need to be disconnected. I will have his mail forwarded to our address as of tomorrow. Thank you for loving our boy. You will always have a place in our hearts." And suddenly, I was just not okay again. Not that I ever was completely okay. I think the only reason I got through cleaning the entire house before I had my breakdown was because up until that point, I had a task. I had a reason to not let my mind dwell on what had happened. I just did it. As awesome new guy told me on the phone yesterday, you nutted up, took responsibility, and got shit done. Which is something that Brian never really could do. I would bet my next 10 paychecks that if the roles were reversed and I had passed suddenly, he would still be sitting alone in that house, wallowing, not sure what to do with our home and my stuff. That was just how he was. He just shut down. It was incredibly frustrating. I responded, "I am well. I appreciate you reaching out. I loved him so much and wish more than anything that things could have been different. I will let you guys have your time there. I have been there the last few days cleaning and organizing so our leasing agent can show the house. And so that was one less thing you guys had to worry about. I had to move the electricity into my name because it was off, and had been off for a bit when I got there on Tuesday morning, but he will have a final bill. There is an envelope on the kitchen counter with the cable bill and electric account information. The water bill is there as well, in its own envelope. Gas is through gas company, and as long as you have the address and his social security number, you should be able to get access to that pretty quickly. I have already paid what is hopefully our last month's rent, so there is no need to worry about that. Please let me know if there is ever anything you guys need. You all were always nothing but wonderful to me, and I am grateful for the time we got to spend together. She texted back, "Thank you, and love you," to which I said, "Of course, and love you all too." So that's that, I suppose. It's the end of the blaming Brian saga permanently. Unless they get pissed that I took the coffee table, in which case we will deal with that as it comes. At any rate, I am unsure how I feel. I know that I took on the responsibility of cleaning the house and all that, but I can't help but be frustrated. Even in death, I'm still taking care of him. I'm still helping him in every way I can. Is it because this is how I grieve? Is it because I am a humongous control freak and wanted the house we lived in to be cleaned and organized with care? I don't know. I still have a lot of feelings to go through with my therapist. I will probably be back to post about things from the past, but hopefully you will only see me in Just Yes SO from now on.